A craving kind of looks like a wave where it has a peak. So the peak happens at about 20 minutes or so. And if you can ride the peak up to that 20 minutes, it'll subside.
I just worked a lot and I was a mom and I was busy with a bunch of stuff. And then to reward myself, I would drink and stuff.
Right.
And so it's like, that was it. I don't have time for hobbies. Who has time for hobbies? Like, I just catch a bus. That's how I have fun. And then in recovery, I had to get creative and I started doing all these things that I'd never done before. Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, the stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. All right. Hey, sober family and our entire listener community. Our guest today has so much to offer, and it's from another unique perspective and experience, which is really what the show is all about. Her name is Sally Magee, and she's an engineer. She's a Gallup-certified Strengths Coach. She does management leadership, consulting, and she's an accredited sobriety coach as well. So she really does run the gamut. And her sobriety coaching business is called Magee Coaching Solutions. And you can learn more about that at www.mageecoaching.com. And I'll put all this in the show notes so that you guys have the links. But that's where she offers a judgment-free zone to transform your relationship with alcohol. She offers assistance and tools, whether you're sober curious or sober serious, no matter where you are on your path. And if you're interested in her other coaching services, more in the professional realm, check out www.mageeleadership.com. And this is where she works to build peak performance teams and develop high impact leaders. And her episode will be available on YouTube and then obviously wherever you get your podcast. So having said all that, Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. That was a mouthful of just describing the kind of two tracks of my business. And thank you for the intro.
I could have gone on when I was reading your sites and reading up on you. And we have a mutual friend, Lisa. And I could have talked about you a lot more, but I want you to do the talking about you today. So
sure.
Let's start with an icebreaker. I try to always do this because sometimes we get into some, not so lighthearted things in these conversations. But if your life had a theme song, what would it be and why?
Yeah. So I had a hard time deciding what theme song I might choose for this. So I have two. So I hope that's okay. Perfect. But the first one is Broken and Beautiful by Kelly Clarkson. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a line in it, like when I'm feeling really confident and like feeling really good about myself, there's a little line that goes like this. It says, I know I'm Superwoman. I know I'm strong. I know I've got this because I've had it all along. I'm phenomenal. I'm enough. I don't need you to tell me who to be. So like when I'm feeling like really awesome about myself, yeah, just like you want to give snaps to that, right? And then there's like the moments where, not everyone has super stellar days. So the second song I just wanted to bring up was called Changing by John Mayer. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but the line that really spoke to me about this one is that it says, "I'm not done changing. I may be old and I may be young, but I'm not done changing." And I think it just goes to show just the evolution of people's journeys.
Yes. Man, I love that. You really put some thought into those. And I love how you talk about the swing, right? Of we're in different places day to day, emotionally and otherwise. And also the fact that, I don't know about you, but I tend to have black and white, all or nothing thinking. It's something I'm a pretty intense person, and it's been that way since I was little. And I always feel like things are permanent, like whatever is happening right now, however I'm feeling right now, like, oh God, I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And like, we know that's not true intellectually.
Right. Right.
But it can be hard to break out of that feeling or that fear. So I think that the John Mayer song you're talking about, that we're always changing, doesn't have anything to do with age or anything. It's just this constant, everything is always changing. And so
yeah,
if it's really great right now, that's really good. We should enjoy it. It's probably not going to always be that way, and vice versa, right? If things are really shitty right now, it's okay. It's going to pass. But it's interesting when things are really, really good for me, I have thought before, when is this going to go away? When is this going to get taken away? But when things are really bad, I assume it's forever. It's very odd how the mind doesn't help me on the flip side of that. I'm aware of it now, and I can redirect that thinking. But for years, it definitely controlled some of the decisions I made out of fear. So great music shares. So can you take us back through, because this podcast, we talk to people across the entire landscape of like various levels of addiction and different ways to recovery and all of that kind of thing. Some people coming out of prison, other people never even had a parking ticket, right? Associated with their drinking. So can you tell us kind of what your relationship used to be like with alcohol and when you stopped drinking?
Yeah, I would love to share a little bit of that. The first word that comes to mind when you say like your relationship with alcohol is unhealthy. So I definitely had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And when it comes to, the extremes of getting out of jail versus never having a parking ticket, I would consider myself very much a gray area drinker. I don't know if you're familiar with that term in kind of the recovery space, but it's the difference between those two extremes, right? The every now and then drinking versus, the rock bottom types that have real, more serious issues.
Right.
I was in that gray area. I didn't have any rock bottom, like really bad rock bottom moments, but I definitely had an unhealthy relationship where I was over drinking too frequently. And it was starting to impact, my clarity of thought and, my work. Yeah. My work was fine, I would describe it as, but it wasn't stellar. And my relationship, everything in my life kind of was, struggled a little bit. I definitely wasn't thriving, if you want to think about it that way. And I just was kind of in that gray area of, I also, thinking back is I was using alcohol to self-medicate, and I'm, kind of openly admitting that it was, an unhealthy relationship, but I was using it as a stress reliever because I thought alcohol relieved my stress. I didn't know what I didn't know, that it actually makes your stress worse and like makes your anxiety, depression, gives you on these like roller coaster of emotions. I didn't know at the time, like how bad it really messes with your brain chemistry. And I am one who suffers from anxiety and depression. And it was definitely not making it any better. It was making it a lot worse. And I just didn't know because I really did think it was helping me. It was the tool. It was my coping mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes complete sense. And I've heard this a million times. It was part of my experience as well. And if you really get into the neuroscience and the physiology, particularly for women, hormones, and it's a whole nother ballgame for our physiology typically. Addiction or no addiction, right? Whether people believe that's predisposed, it's a disease, it's a choice, whatever you believe, the alcohol definitely has impacts on our bodies physically and physiologically.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
The mental and all that. And I never put that together too. Like, how could alcohol make my anxiety worse? I feel so much better when I catch a buzz. Like, it's the only time I felt relief, right? And so you couldn't tell me that it was making me anxious. But yeah, when I would wake up in the morning and you didn't get rest in all the things, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now.
But you can only get it, like you said, once you're on the other side of it, right?
Yeah. Like quite a bit of distance, right? To where you've got a few weeks, a few months under your belt to say, oh, wow, my mood is better. My appetite, my clarity, my sleep. I feel motivated to exercise and do things that are good for me, right? And keep my promises to myself and perform better at work, like give a damn instead of just get through the day kind of thing, which is where a lot of us, so you have been, when did you stop drinking? Or when did you change your relationship with alcohol? Like, when did that come?
I did like an initial test of what sobriety might look like. Like the first program that I did was in December of 21. So it's coming on 3 years. Is that right? Yeah, it's coming up on 3 years. Yeah.
So what was the biggest surprise for you? Like, for me, there were many revelations of like, wow, but what was the biggest surprise when you got sober?
I think the biggest surprise was really the difference in like my mental clarity, like my train of thoughts. I was like, I'm a coach and a consultant. I do workshops, and I didn't realize how much alcohol really was impacting just how my brain works. I think better on my feet. I'm a better facilitator. I'm a better coach. Without it, I just didn't realize the difference of always having this kind of little bit of brain fog versus like zero brain fog ever. such a difference in how I think. I also I mentioned this, like I didn't know what I didn't know. And I learned just what alcohol does to your brain, your body. The first program I did was a 21-day challenge. And it was like an email every day that kind of talked about different things of like what alcohol does to you and some different tools and techniques to, to monitor your drinking, to slow down, or to eventually quit. It wasn't intended to be like a sobriety program. It was just an experiment, really, is the way I took it. I'm going to just quit drinking for 21 days and everything will be fine. It's like some magic bullet. It doesn't quite work that way, but at least started my train of thought around like being sober curious. And I never even knew what that term meant before.
Yeah. Yeah. Me neither. I know that seems relatively new, I guess, that type of terminology. Because for a lot of us, and it's different for everybody. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I want to talk to all the people. I had been in such a bubble of 12-step recovery programs that I thought like, this is how we do it. This is the only way to do it. And it got a little dogmatic, like for my thinking as I grew. And I know a lot of people who've done it differently, or maybe who did learn to control their drinking. And in AA, that's not a thing that happens, right? But there's a difference. If you're a true addict versus if you're a problem drinker, or if you're using it as a Band-Aid, like people have different layers of dependency.
Sure.
And so to hear people say sober curious, and I was like, for me, one may as well be 20 drinks. Like that, I have tested that out plenty of times, and it is not worth tinkering with anymore. And I've gotten my ass kicked enough times to where I'm good. My ego finally, but for a lot of other people, they were able to figure that out. And that experimentation, you know, for other people, when I see it actually work, I'm just like, wow, that's so cool. Or people will do it for fun, right? Or to lose weight or to get ready for a race. They'll just stop drinking for 30 days.
Right.
And they're like, I feel amazing. And then the next time you see them, they have a drink in their hand and you're like, why did you know what I mean? But
yeah, like, why did you go back?
Yeah, why'd you go back? And it's like, it's such a part of our social fabric. It's such a part of our lives that sometimes we don't even want it or need it. We just do it. It's just kind of a thing that we do. And for some of us that causes problems, and for other people it doesn't. I mean, I don't have anything against people drinking.
I don't either. I know. Yeah. And I know for me, it does not work for me either. I tried the experimenting, the moderating. I tried those tricks. It does not work. It just takes up so much space in your brain.
Yeah. And I'm like, I would never waste the calories on 2 drinks. Like, if you're going to do it, like, let's do it.
Right. Exactly.
But I was using it as a medicine as well. I was using it to just not black out. I didn't really go for that type of, but I just wanted to like turn the volume of my mind down, and I didn't want to have to feel certain things. And so it was a good numbing agent, and I have terrible anxiety and little swings of depression. I didn't know that. So apparently I was trying to make that feel better too. And you said, it exacerbated all those things over time. But what was or is the hardest thing for you in terms of like not having it in your life anymore?
I think those first couple of weeks was the hardest. The first couple of months really was the hardest. I made it through the 21-day challenge mostly. I think I had a drink or two, and the motto was progress over perfection. So I was okay with that. It wasn't like you had to do 100%. And then I did dry January the following year because I had started in December. So I did dry January, and I did that full 30 days. The hardest part, I think, was just coming to that realization that it is really an unhealthy coping tool that I'm using, and that my life could look better without it. But I really struggled because I wasn't seeking long-term sobriety.
Right.
That's not why I did the challenge. I just knew I was having some issues and, maybe should look at this and do a break, take a break for a little while. And so I think the hardest part was just kind of coming to terms with, oh, I do have an issue here and maybe I should do something about this long term, and just kind of thinking about what long-term really meant, because that was not my intention. I remember calling my mom and dad at the time and just being like, yeah, I'm doing this experiment. I'm not drinking for a while. It's not that I'm quitting drinking or anything, but I'm just doing this experiment. So to me, that was really hard to kind of then grasp, oh, this is longer than an experiment. And I really need to do something about this.
Yeah. My original sponsor used to always say in meetings, she goes, people who have normal relationships with alcohol don't ask if they have a problem. Like, they're not having those conversations with themselves. Because we know, right? We know, we see it, and we're like, something's off here. This is, and because I was still trying to decide, right? Am I really an alcoholic? Do I have a problem? I was going through a hard time. I think I was just drinking too much. It was probably a phase. I'm probably overreacting. I was trying to like be able to not have to quit forever. And we say one day at a time, all the time. It's so trite, but like, there are times where you really, I cannot think about forever. That's too overwhelming for me to know that I will never have anesthesia again in my life to get through something hard or to have extra fun, at vacation. So it has to be just this one day. And I've been sober almost 11 years now. So to me, it's just, drinking is just not a thing. Like, it's just not part of my life. I don't really hang out with people who like it's, but those first couple years of getting through holidays and vacations and like, hard things even, but one of the hardest ones for me was the good stuff, right? Like I'm going to a concert, I'm going to a show, I'm going on this trip. And I kind of wanted to intensify that that fun, that joy or whatever. And dating is really hard when you're sober too, because
oh, I bet.
Like talking to strangers and talking to people, getting to know people, like having sex sober, like all these things. And you're like, this is very uncomfortable.
Because you're not numbing out, right?
Yeah, you have to just show up as your actual self and be vulnerable. And it's, it's scary. And yeah. And most people, when you're in that type of social setting, what does everybody say? Let's meet for a drink, right? I mean, so that can be hard to navigate as well. So tell us about your coaching and kind of what that's all about. Because I love like Naked Mind and all these different books and approaches and people's experiences, and then sobriety coaching. So like, what does that mean? Do people do they call you like they would call a sponsor? Are you putting them through a curriculum? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, good question. So it's not sponsor like you would call if you're like in an AA type of sponsor. Yeah. It is professional coaching. That's really how to describe it. If you've ever worked with a business coach or a life coach, it really is more of the life coaching type of aspect, but it's focused in people's relationship with alcohol. Okay. So I do two things. I run a 31-day course, which is curriculum, because you mentioned curriculum, right?
Right.
So it is when someone starts working with me, they do the 31-day course first. And I run that as a standalone once a quarter. You can just take my course. It's a video lesson every day. It's intended to teach people about, the impact of alcohol in all the different, brain, body, emotions, different systems, your sleep. And then it transitions to, I'll bring up the Gallup-certified Strengths Coach aspect of it as well. It transitions to thinking about what are your strengths? How can you leverage your strengths toward your sobriety goals? Looking at the 5 elements of well-being, whether it's, social well-being, physical, career well-being, and looking at really the impact of alcohol on all of these aspects of your life. So that's what the course is really about. Okay. So if someone wanted to, sign up for my signature coaching package, they would start, it's a 6-month package. They would start with the 31 days of the course. And it is 100% intended to be an alcohol-free month. So it's an effort toward taking a 31-day challenge. Like I said, you can do the course just by on its own. Right. But when I have clients that want to do a 6-month program, that's more for the sober serious, what I call the sober serious. Okay. The sober curious is kind of the course offering. And then the sober serious is someone who says, I need more significant help. I really want to change my relationship with alcohol. I'm in it for 6 months or longer. And I work with them one-on-one, like any professional coaching endeavor. And we really look at the reasons why they're drinking in the first place. Some of them, as you know, are using it as coping mechanisms. So we look at kind of holistically every area of their lives and what is the alcohol that role is playing and why. And if you are using it for stress relief, let's look at what's causing that stress. Let's look at the cause that's underlying the drinking in the first place. Right. And try to tackle that problem, because the over drinking is just a symptom. There's usually something underlying that's causing the person to drink in the first place. Yeah. Sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's tough relationships. There's a whole lot of reasons. And that's what coaching can really help the client kind of uncover a little bit more deeply about themselves as to what they're using alcohol for.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. Yeah. Because I love, I'm MBA, PMP, all that stuff. And I love structure. I love scaffolding and to understand what's the curriculum? What are the steps? What are we doing? What's the syllabus? But also because what you're talking about is kind of some of the stuff we do in AA, but then I've coupled that with therapy and with medication for certain things as well, right? Because in what you're doing, it sounds like a little bit of all of that, right? I need to educate myself and understand what's going on with me. I need to deal with the root causes of familial relationships, romantic relationships, my work life. Like, and I might need to make some changes in my relationships and in my work life balance and the way I eat, the way I, just whatever. I need to really take stock. And we call it inventory because really that's what it is. Right. But
Right.
I always like some type of structure, literature, science, evidence-based activity that's moving me toward an outcome, not just somebody talking to me. Because I've been in therapy for years. It's helpful in some regards, and others it's not, because I'm very action-oriented. So like, I knew that your program was like that, but I wanted to hear you explain it so that people knew what they were kind of getting into. And then it sounds like, is there a community aspect as well? Do your clients kind of support each? To me, that's a huge part of recovery, is just having that support system, having other friends that are in recovery, people you can go do fun stuff that doesn't revolve around alcohol, supporting one another when you're going through hard stuff. Like, do you foster community with your clients as well, or do they like to be anonymous?
Yeah, I do. They don't like to be anonymity is not a concern for them in general. But I do a community type of effort with the course. So I run the course once a quarter for 1 month a quarter, like Dry January. Sober October is coming up, so I'll be running one then. I do one in April and Dry July. So I do them 4 times a year. And each week of the course, I have a group coaching call. So anyone doing the course can come to the group coaching call. They've got me live and not just on video, because they're watching the videos every day. So they've got, the live coach that they can ask questions. They can learn from one another. They can kind of share some of each other's struggles and challenges. And so I kind of foster community that way. And I don't have, not yet anyway, I don't have like a membership, or I've been thinking about ways to kind of expand it to be more community-based. But right now, it's once a week calls with anyone doing the course at the time.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I always ask people this because it was I felt like it caused me some issues, but do you think that your intellect made it harder or easier for you to kind of make that decision? For me, I always thought I could figure it out. I can think my way out of this. I'm different. I can come up with a smart, creative plan to still drink, but do it in a way that doesn't disrupt my life. Like I thought I was smarter than what the evidence was showing me. And I could justify things and think, and so I wonder, with your intellect and also your coaching, you're leading leaders of organizations. People come to you for answers. They come to you to solve difficult problems, both in sobriety stuff and in business. So does your intellect or ego, did that get in the way for you, or did it actually help you to make the decision?
So interesting. Good question. Interesting. So I'm as a certified Gallup-certified Strengths Coach. My tool that I work with clients is called the Clifton Strengths Assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with
I am, but with it. Can you explain it just a little bit so the audience kind of knows what it is?
Yeah, so it's an assessment that you can do online, and you log in, and the results give you 34 themes of talent. So there's 34 themes or 34 talents, and you get your results in ranked order. So you have your dominant themes or your top 10. Those are the strongest natural talents that you were born with. So the assessment is really getting at what you're naturally good at and what your natural strengths and talents are. So it's called Clifton Strengths. Like I said, there's 34 themes. My number one theme is called learner. So I love to learn. I love to teach. I love to coach. I love the learning process. My number 5 is called futuristic. And so I'm going to come back to your question here. Is futuristic really sees like visions of the future, inspires others with visions, and is very creative, more the visionary, thinking like future oriented.
Right.
So when you talked about like asking the question about my intellect or my ego, I guess I didn't realize at the time that I was using my strengths when I first was going through those first couple of weeks and months of my sobriety journey. I was leaning heavily on my learner. I was enjoying the content of the programs that I was doing. I was learning a lot, and at the same time, because this is my natural way of being. I love to learn, right? And so that's what your strengths are. That's what they offer you, just knowing what your talents are. And so it's my instinctual kind of response is to learn about something. And my futuristic, though, is always thinking about the future. I didn't see, here's where I got in my own way, is I didn't see long-term sobriety as like part of my vision. I didn't have a picture of what that looks like. I didn't really know anyone in long-term sobriety except my father, and we'll talk about his story also a little bit. And he just went a totally different route. And I didn't see that route really applying to me, but I didn't know anyone that was sober.
Right.
And so I didn't have like this vision of what sober, happy people could look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the intellect, like in one respect, it helped me with my learner. I have high input, has this kind of deep craving to know more is my number 4 talent. And so I loved that learning process, but I didn't see long-term sobriety as really part of my solution.
That's so interesting.
So it kind of helped and hindered me.
Yeah.
Right?
And me too. Like, and in retrospect, you can see those things, right? When you've had enough distance. And I think,
right.
It's, for me that in the beginning, I felt so good physically. I was sleeping well again. I was in solution. I was working steps and I was reading stuff and I was learning and I was adapting a new way of living. And how I had been living was so miserable that I was so eager to learn and to practice and to do new things. But the novelty wore off, right? Like after a couple of years of that, you read all the books, you learn all the things, you go to all the meetings, you do all the stuff, and you're like, okay, I'm bored. That's my personality too. I need to always be doing something new, learning something new, be challenged. And so the components are the service piece, right? Now it's time for me to take what I've learned and to go teach somebody else who's coming in who wants to learn new stuff and who needs help. And then deepening my growth and evolution, kind of like exactly what you're doing, right? You will always be learning about this for the rest of your life, but you're also being of service by sharing what you've learned with other people. And hopefully then they will continue to pay it forward. So that's that was a very interesting answer. And I love that because I figured it would be both, right? That's a complicated, in AA, they always talk about like one side of your brain manufactures the bullshit and the other side buys it. And sometimes,
nice.
It's like, if you're too smart for your own good, or you think you're so smart, like, I can never outthink my way. I can never think a way to not be physiologically impacted by alcohol the way that I am. It's my body chemistry. I will never be able to think my way out of that, right? That is the reality.
Right. Right.
But because I'm so smart, using air quotes, I thought I could figure it out, right? I can hack. There is a hack to this and I will figure it out. And it did not go well. So if you had like one, kind of tool or kind of oh shit handle when you're in a moment that you either use yourself or that you teach other people to use, what would it be? Or what is it?
Like for in the moment, for like if you really have like really drawn to like needing a drink, there's a behavior, like a craving tool called surfing the urge. You're probably familiar with that.
I know.
A craving kind of looks like a wave where it has a peak. So the peak happens at about 20 minutes or so. And if you can ride the peak up to that 20 minutes, it'll subside. It's literally like a wave. Like it will have a maximum, a crest. So if you can surf the urge, like surfing, like you're surfing the wave of this urge or this craving for about 20 minutes, it will start to subside. So that's just naturally how our bodies work.
Yeah.
And so surfing the urge is probably one of the biggest and best tools for in the moment. And you
Okay.
can surf that urge in many ways, right? So find something, I love this kind of way of thinking about it, is find something that ends in ing, that doesn't have drink in front of it, that doesn't have drink in front of it, but like walking or calling a friend or petting your dog or, you know, some other verb that you can
Yeah.
substitute. That you can just do anything for 20 minutes and
Right.
it will most likely start to subside and go away. And then 20 minutes will pass because you've distracted yourself. That's the biggest thing, is you want to distract yourself from the craving and remove it from your mental train of thought. So like
Right.
taking a walk, go even just like walking down to the street corner and back, or going out to your mailbox or around your house. You know, like I said, calling a friend or just doing a puzzle on your phone, anything that you can come up with.
I
And
love that.
I always recommend to people that they make a list of like 100 items. And out of that 100 items that end in ing, that don't involve smoking or drinking, usually is the tip. Then you've got like your go-to tool. You got 100 items, and they're just verbs that you can pick, you know, just anything that comes to mind. Then you've got it like either on your phone or like on your desk or somewhere that you can reference it. And then you can go through the list, like do the brainstorming ahead of time before the urge happens.
Yes.
Then you've got your list of like go-to things, and put some asterisks next to the ones that are like the most common that you think you'll use, like calling a friend.
Right.
That's an easy one. Taking your dog for a walk, or, you know, hanging out with your spouse. Just some easy things that you can use to surf the urge. That would be my number one kind of go-to.
I've literally never heard that. And I love it, and I will use it, and I will share it. We have things called pause when agitated, and there's some similar things, but I love that. First of all, knowing how long it's going to last, having an idea of how long I'm going to be uncomfortable for helps me feel more comfortable, because, okay, look, I'm going to feel weird for 20 minutes and I need to distract. And I think too, we do that too, right? Call your sponsor, go to a meeting, go for a walk, sit down and meditate, write in your journal, like love on your dog, whatever, all the things that we know what works for us, and some things don't work as well, and whatever. You have to experiment with that. I love the idea of having a list, you know, ready for when those moments come, because they will. And I think too, the idea of, you know, for me, I need to also, if it starts happening a lot, I need to ask myself what's really going on with me. Because that's a weird thing for me to want to have a drink, or I do want to escape sometimes. And sometimes that will translate in my mind. It will populate as you could escape with a drink or a pill or whatever. And if I'm working out too much because I want to escape, that's something going on too. That's a pattern. And it's like, what's really going on with me? What's bothering me? Like, do I need to go talk to someone about something? Or, you know, is it hormonal? Am I working too much? Am I not sleeping well? Like and so that helps too. But a lot of times it has nothing to do with anything. It's just a random craving because of something I saw or a song I heard, or just, I don't know, weird old ghosts that are still kind of running around in there. So, so you've recently had a terrible and huge loss in your life. And if you're okay with it, I would like for you to share about it as much as you're comfortable, and also what it's been like for you going through that without, you know, being able to reach out for the numbing agent that we became dependent on back in the day, you know. So if you're comfortable, only as comfortable as you are to talk about it, but I think it would be really helpful for a lot of people who are going through hard things without the ability to numb out.
Yeah, the hard things piece kind of resonates with me too, is like there's always those firsts, right? The first party you go to, or the first wedding shower, or you know, all these events that happen. I recently lost my dad. Ironically, he was sober for over a decade, so he did have a rock bottom. He went to a rehab facility, and about, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago or so, and has stayed sober. And I don't know how he did it. He didn't go to AA. I think he might have read a book, maybe. I'm not sure. How he really did it, but one of the things that he used as kind of a coping mechanism, I believe, and I know that about his habits, is he would go for walks. He would just go out on a Sunday afternoon, and 2-3 hours would go by and he'd come home. One Sunday in June, he didn't come home, and he was hit by a drunk driver and he was killed, like, probably pretty instantly. We don't know the whole story. But yeah, he was 79. Because he was sober and he walked so regularly, and like, he led a really healthy life. And he had both of his dad, his grandfather lived in, like, well into their 90s. So we all expected that would be my dad. Like, he would live at least to 95, who knows, right?
Yeah.
And the irony, I mean, there's so many ironic things about this story. Is he was hit by a drunk driver, and he was sober. He also was at my mom and dad's, at their neighborhood post office, and he was a stamp collector. He was, like, literally dropping off a card to hold the mail when he was out for his walk, and he was hit, like, in the parking lot or in the sidewalk of the post office. Guy just kind of ran through where he was walking, and that was almost 3 months ago today, and it's been rough. I will say, the first losing a parent, my mom is still around, thank God. She's 77 and healthy and smart and, like, full mental capacity and everything. Like, no issues there at all. And, they say losing a parent. I know you lost your dad too, and it's different. It's different than losing a grandparent. It's different than losing an aunt or an uncle. Like, a parent is different. And I will say I have not been tempted to drink. I did not have any cravings. I guess I don't know, I'm really lucky that I didn't, like, instinctively turn to alcohol, that it, like, all of that is out of my brain, that I wasn't looking to that as a coping mechanism. Thank God, because I can imagine it would have been really a lot harder. I think because he was sober, because, my mom generally doesn't keep alcohol in the house. So, like, when I was there for his funeral and services and everything, it wasn't in front of me. I don't know if that would have been tempting at all, but I'm really lucky that I haven't been tempted at all or had any cravings.
I'm sorry, first of all, that happened. It's just awful. There are no words. And I think a lot of people in life, whether just in usual life or on movies or shows, if something happens, the next scene is that somebody's in a bar or they're pouring wine, or it's just such a part of our and so a lot of people may numb their grieving and not really even know that's what they're doing, or they're not doing it intentionally. And I think when you're intentionally sober, you feel your feelings. And so for me, when I lost my pop, it was liberating and beautiful. And I felt very proud of myself to be able to be with him and to be sad. And we had the luxury of knowing that he was going to die because he had cancer. So as hard as that was to watch, we also had the time to have conversations and whatnot, and to be there for him at the end. But it was the most painful thing I've been through, but also the most liberating, because I was just able to be sad. I couldn't run away. I didn't really want to run away. I knew, and that's what I think a lot of us have learned, is that you're not going to put it off. it will come back. It's going to be waiting there. It may manifest in different ways in your life, but we can't not feel pain. And so to me, it's a gift to not have the ability to run away anymore, that I have to just sit with it, just be uncomfortable. Even there are moments where I'm like, I don't want to feel like this. I mean, his birthday was yesterday and it was a weird melancholy kind of feeling. But to your point, you know, the worst thing that I could do for myself or his memory would be to go get drunk over it. Right. So I feel fortunate. I'm fortunate that I didn't want to do that. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I actually, wanted to be there for myself and my family and whatnot. But in your story and with your mom and your brothers and what you all are going through and the fact that it was so sudden, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine that. So I'm sure people have told you this, but I'm really proud of you and sorry that happened. And I just wish you guys a lot of healing. And the first year, probably after my pop died, it was all visions of bad things and I wasn't sleeping well. And it was a lot of yuck. And now it's slowly, when I think about him, it's like funny stuff from childhood, and it's starting, those are starting to kind of trickle in, which is really a relief. So I hope it's so recent for you guys, but I hope you get there too.
There's something my therapist taught me is a kind of a tool I can't remember what it's called exactly. It's something like image replacement or something like that. I could get the tool wrong. Where you just kind of listening to what you just described, how you were having all those bad memories and like that some of the negative thoughts around him being sick, but you're like, the tool is to try to replace that in your brain with the happy memory or the photograph of like you at a birthday party or him having fun doing something. And you can't see it in my background, but I have a picture of him from a recent trip that we took last year in London. And he's jumping on this bridge. It's got a glass bottom and he's just jumping and it looks like he's kneeling because it's glass, but he's not. Like he's jumping, he's in midair. He's like having so much fun on this glass bottom bridge, like this huge smile on his face. And that's been my tool, is like, I have a copy of it in my office, and like, that's my image replacement tool that I've been trying to use, and just trying to remember those really good times and not the ones that come into my mind when I think about what actually happened.
Yeah, that's a great tool. Thank you for sharing that. How do you have fun now in sobriety? I mean, that was a terrible transition. God, I should work on my segues, but this is something like, let's go to, when hard things happen. It was really weird because even at my pop's funeral and around that week and like all the hospice and all the things that were happening, we would be sitting around bawling and like completely catatonic and silent. And then we would be like uproarious laughter 30 minutes later, telling a story about the crazy shit that my pop did or stuff from our childhood or whatever. And like, it seemed probably irreverent to a lot of people, but that's kind of part of how we deal with stuff, I guess. And, he wouldn't want us to sit around being sad or whatever. So, but also in sobriety, a lot of people who come into AA anyways, they're like, I'm never going to have fun again. This sucks. I'm just going to be bored forever. Like it just feels like a prison sentence. You feel like some kind of punishment or whatever. And then a lot of people, you start having a lot of fun, and it's not just regular fun. It's like better than before because it's pure. Like when you laugh or you're enjoying something, it's just pure. There's no chemicals involved, right? It's like real joy, real laughter, real sorrow, whatever it is, you're feeling it. So like, what do you do? Did you pick up hobbies? Do you do stuff for fun? Like, how do you, because a lot of us, I was pretty lazy. The way I had fun was I drank. Like, what do you do for fun? I drink stuff.
I drank. Right.
And so when you don't drink anymore, it's like, what do I do for fun? I don't even know. So like, what did you do? What do you do?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the things, this just kind of comes to top of mind, is one of the things that I used to do was go to concerts and drink. And so my husband and I are like big concert goers. We love Dave Matthews Band and like
Oh,
travel around the country to see
yes.
him and stuff.
I love
But,
this.
or even other shows that we have, we would go to. I was definitely the drinker and would be having a good time. I think like the biggest, most fun is to not drink at a concert because you remember everything the next day. Like there's no fuzzy memories. There's no like piecing together. Did he play that song? Like there's none of that.
Yeah.
That's the most fun, is like you go to a concert and you're like 100% totally present, having a good time. Maybe getting a Diet Coke or something to drink that is non-alcoholic, and just enjoying the moment and
Yeah.
being present for the show, and just, being in the big crowd with the stadium, and like, that's the most fun. So that's one that, that's one
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind
Yeah.
when you talked about like,
Yeah.
I used to drink to have fun.
Yeah. What do you do for fun? I was like, oh, go to
Right.
day drink. Like, it was, I just worked a lot and I was a mom and I was busy with a bunch of stuff. And then to reward myself, I would drink and stuff.
Right.
And so it's like,
Right.
that was it. I don't have time for hobbies. Who has time for hobbies? Like, I just catch a buzz. That's how I have fun. And then in recovery, I had to get creative and I started doing all these things that I had never done before. And it's actually fun and exciting. And, but you also, your crowd changes, people you hang out with, maybe the places you go, like your life starts to change a lot, right? And so your definition of fun versus mine at some point, is going to look a little different. So, no, I love shows and comedy shows and so many things. And it's nice to be able to remember and to be present, right? To just be fully there. Because in those moments, I have those moments all the time where I just realize that I'm fully there. I'm just with the moment, even if I'm hiking with my dogs or I'm, last night I was looking at the stars in my backyard and I was just there all the way.
Yeah.
There in that moment. And that is so hard for me to do with my brain, the way my brain works. And
Yeah.
so it's a gift.
Yeah, that whole aspect of just being really present and enjoying the moment versus like wanting to numb out or just get a buzz.
Yeah.
There's just a different feeling about it.
Yeah. And it's, that muted a lot of pain, but it also muted a lot of joy, the drinking. And so
exactly.
So it's kind of cool to and Brene Brown talks about it all the time of like, we can't selectively numb emotions, right? It's like,
right.
If you want the full joy, we're going to have to experience the full sorrow too. It's just the human condition, right? And I wanted the good stuff. I didn't want the bad stuff, and that did not work. So, do you see yourself differently since you stopped drinking? Like, has your relationship with yourself changed? Your perception of yourself? I'm always curious how people kind of evolve with that.
Yeah. One, I see myself as a non-drinker. So like, I don't know, yes, I'm a sober human being, but I just kind of, if labels are required, then I don't drink. And so I see myself as a non-drinker.
Yeah.
But two, I think my self-confidence has really been boosted by getting over the whole drinking thing of my past. One story I share with people sometimes is like those first couple of hard events, like doing the hard things when you're not drinking, those first couple of them, after you make it through them, you feel so amazing. Like I remember those first couple of like a ski weekend away where we were with friends and everybody was drinking heavily and not me. And at the end of the weekend, we got home and I was like, I feel so amazing. I didn't drink this whole time. And it was like a little mini milestone. But to me, I just felt so amazing, so confident, and like on top of the world. And it was, not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things now. But in those early days, like it's just celebrating those little moments.
Yeah.
And really reinforcing it with that, like feeling confident. Like my self-confidence has definitely boosted 100% because of, just being sober and the way I've changed. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I love that so much. And it resonates with me so much too. And where you get back from something that was hard and you're just like, look at you. You're like, I did it. It's just this feeling of like, I'm so freaking proud of myself. I can't even believe that. But then also you're building confidence, all these little wins, right? And then you start to realize like, I'm doing it. Like I'm actually enjoying it, right? And there will be hard times and I'm going to move through them. And if I need support, I have support around me that I can reach out to and whatnot. But I think too, like you were saying, just being able to handle things in a different way. And it's weird, right? When, especially because I'm in situations where I'm the only one not drinking and it feels a little weird, but you feel like you're not a part of, you feel like people think you're judging them, or I don't know. I've run into all kinds of weird situations with that. And, so navigating all that too is interesting, but that feeling of like pride and like, I'm where I'm going to say I'm going to be, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to show up ready to work. I'm going to show up ready. Like I am dependable. I trust myself. I trust my instincts again. It's kind of like all of that stuff, right? I'm not going to make decisions that put me in danger or that make me feel disappointed tomorrow. Like my decisions are clear, right? Yeah. So that's a good feeling.
Yeah, it's an incredible feeling. You're not letting yourself down every day.
Yes. Because that cycle of self-loathing and what's wrong with me? Why did I do that?
Oh my God, that's the worst.
Exhausting.
Yes.
Well, I am so grateful that you shared all of this with us. And I wanted to end on just what's the most helpful thing that I always like to leave people with like a nugget, because a lot of people who listen to this aren't sober and maybe they don't know if they want to get sober. They're kicking the tires. They want to hear people's different experiences. So what's something that somebody said to you that, that was helpful? And I don't know, maybe you didn't have a situation where other people around you were concerned. I certainly did. I had people say a lot of things to me and some of it made me double down on my drinking. And that was my responsibility. I'm not blaming it on other people. Other things actually really made me think and were actually very loving and helpful, but kind of firm. So I always wonder, did anyone say anything to you that helped you think about something differently or make a decision? Or were you just kind of with yourself on that?
Well, I don't know how to answer this one, Amanda. One thing that my doctor at the time told me was like, give 6 months of sobriety a try. And I was like, are you crazy?
6 months?
So at first I was like, no effing way. Am I going to try that? Like, that's not happening.
Right.
But I did find a program, like I mentioned, that was a 21 day. I was like, I could do that. I could do 21 days.
Yes.
And the motto was progress over perfection. So like, that's what I tell people too, is just take a 30-day break, take a month off, and you don't have to be perfect. But like, do a challenge and see what it feels like. Get a journal, take some notes along the way, jot down little notes that as you start to experience different things in the month, and see how you feel. Like, I totally encourage people to go the curious route.
Yeah.
And not say, I'm never drinking for the rest of my life, because I think that's too hard for people to grasp. But take a break. Try 21 days or even a 10-day challenge. Like, if you think you might have an issue, try 10 days.
Yeah. That is great.
Because even
advice.
that is really hard. Like 10 days can be really, really hard. And if you can get to double digits, then raise the bar, get to 20 days, get to 1 month, get to 100 days. Like, those initial milestones, those are huge.
Huge.
So if you can get to 10 days, that's a big deal.
I remember, and this is great advice, because there's no reason to put all that pressure on yourself. You don't have to be perfect. It's what a lot of people trying to get sober forever do. We're good for a while and we're white knuckling the crap out of it. And then we fail. And so we just go on a
right.
We do it harder than we would have ever done it before, because now I was trying to be perfect and now I'm a complete failure. So like, I may as well burn it all down. And that's this weird cycle, that all or nothing kind of thing. And what you're saying is like, I remember when I stood up and I got many 30-day chips. It took me a long time to stay sober. I got sober a lot, but I didn't stay sober a lot. But first time I picked up my 30-day chip, I remember feeling, when I was up at the thing saying thank you or whatever, I remember feeling in my mind like it had been 5 years. I am not kidding. I felt like I had been sober for 5 freaking years and it had been 1 month. So
wow.
how hard it was, I was like, 30 days, that can't be that hard. By day 2, I was like, oh, this is awful.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had a little more freedom. It was more dangerous for me to drink than other people, because of things that would happen and whatnot. But still, I was so rigid about it. So I love that advice of and people around the rooms always said, just try sobriety for a year. If you don't feel better after a year, we will refund your misery. And that was one of those things that stuck with me. And I was like, what do I have to lose? What I'm doing is not working.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to commit to this time period and I'm going to see. And I was like, probably after a year, I'll go back to drinking because it's going to be miserable. And a year came around and I was like, I love this. I love this life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's what so many people discover that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's harder in some ways.
Those early, it's just those early days and weeks and months that are the roughest.
Yes. And you've got to have support. You've got to have support and you have to be nice to yourself, right? You don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
Well, again, I just cannot thank you enough. I think you're incredible and amazing. And I hope everyone checks out your coaching stuff. I'll put that in the show notes for people. I'm really sorry about your loss, but I'm glad that you're sober and that you're working through it. So thank you again.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course.